I'm going to say straight up that continuity isn't that big of a deal. In terms of this show, anyway. Friendship is Magic has had a largely consistent track record of callbacks to previous episodes, keeping continuity with lots of things. Subtle things like reading Rainbow, and obvious things like when Scootaloo said,
"Is it about the time when Rarity had wings, and then it got ruined, and then you saved her from plummeting to her doom?"
In fact, I think there's been at least one callback per episode in Season 4 so far. So why cry out continuity? It's My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Of course there's continuity. That'd be like exclaiming to everyone that the episode has a moral. Well, duh. They've been known to do that. It's to be expected. It's a given at this point that there'd be some continuity. So when it comes to seeing a callback to something in the show, or indeed any sort of reference to something either not present at the time, or not present in MLP at all, i.e. pop culture references, I find that I don't care so much about it, unless of course it serves a purpose beyond just being a callback or just being a reference. For example, Rainbow Dash getting anxious over the prospect of no cider in this episode is a callback to her anxiety over the prospect of no cider in the Super Speedy Cider Squeezy episode. This is a good callback because it gives Rainbow Dash a reason beyond because AJ said so to want the bats gone, as well as reminding us of how funny she was in Super Speedy Cider Squeezy, masticating mud. A harmless callback would be when Pinkie Pie sings Fruit Bat Roundup. Not necessary at all to the plot, but it's not too obtrusive. It lasts all of 3 seconds, and as it's being sang by Pinkie Pie, it's not a strange occurrence either. It's the sort of thing we expect from her. So it's harmless, adds nothing, diminishes nothing, and reminds us of one of the best songs in MLP. Now I say one of the best songs, but that's the issue I have with the references the show makes. Callbacks rarely feel out of place because the show is referencing a part of itself, but when MLP references things from the human world, things start to go awry, especially if the references are coming thick and fast. Take the pony signals from this episode. Drowning in Horseshoes finds them to be weird and has problems with them suddenly being a thing. And he's right, they really could have come in handy in earlier episodes. The only explanation you could conjure up would be that they'd never thought of doing that before, but that's stupid, because it makes them all out to be stupid, and they're not stupid, right? Basically, the pony signals are bad because they're a bad reference. And I don't mean bad as in bat signals are bad and you shouldn't reference them, but because the reference is made at the expense of the show's credibility. There are a number of things that happen when you reference something in a show. Number 1, the viewer gets the reference, in which case there are 3 other things that happen. A, they like the thing being referenced. B, they don't like it. Or C, they just don't care about it. When they like the thing being referenced, the viewer, depending on the viewer, will enjoy the episode more because it had a reference they enjoyed. Of course, the opposite is true for someone who didn't like the reference. They'll dislike the episode more. And for people who get the reference but don't feel strongly one way or the other about it, the reaction is the same as number 2. The viewer doesn't get the reference. When this happens, the reference just becomes another thing that happened, and they judge it by itself within the episode. This means that every time there's a reference to something, the people are divided. For some, it may damage their opinion of the episode. For others, it may strengthen their opinion of the episode. And for the rest, it depends on whether the thing that happened is good by its own merit. And really, everybody should judge the reference based on its own merit, but life isn't that simple. These pony signals are an example of a bad reference because they don't make sense within the show. Why are they now a thing? How long did it take for Rarity to learn the spell? How can Rarity learn the spell? When did they get the flashlights? I could accept Pinkie at a stretch because it's the sort of silly precaution she would make, but then why does Applejack have one of her own? Did they build them before night fell? It's never explained. For the people who noticed it was a reference, and who liked the reference, it may not have mattered that it was never explained. They don't care, they like the pony bat signals. But for everyone else it's distracting. Now the pony signals aren't a large part of the episode, so there may have been people who didn't get the reference, but didn't mind either because they were busy having fun, and not analysing every little detail. But you get my point. References seldom work if you just throw them in there without consideration for the implications they bring. That's not to say references are bad. I mean, the Daring Do book in Read It and Weep is an example of a good reference, because it's helpful in delivering the narrative. Rainbow needs to become excited about reading. What better than a book about exciting things? Rainbow loves exciting things. And why not make the book a reference to an exciting story? Indiana Jones. It works. You see the bits that reference scenes from the films, and it makes sense that such a story would get Rainbow Dash into reading. It's a good reference. So to summarise all that, callbacks and references are only as good as what is being referenced and how it fits into the episode. If it doesn't fit into the episode, it's better you leave it out. It's not worth referencing. Okay, that was a mouthful. I've not even started talking about the episode yet. Bats is an episode about apples.
Yeehaw! It's official!
You've all seen it, so let's just skip to the good bit. Oh, 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 it's so cute! Oh, oh my god! Oh, it's so cute! It's like a kitten. Like a really angry kitten, you know, when you accidentally step on its tail. It's all like, and it's trying to be intimidating, but it's so cute, you find yourself almost doing it again so you can film the reaction and put it on YouTube for $1 trillion money. Flutterbat is certainly cute, and I think we can all agree that she's the most interesting thing about this episode. Even if you enjoyed the conflict between Fluttershy and Applejack, and the song is now one of your favourites, I'm pretty sure Flutterbat is the first thing that's going to pop into your mind when the episode is brought up in the future. Now, I've been hearing some people say that this Fluttershy turning into a bat thing, as well as a lot of Season 4, seems to be pandering to us, more so than other seasons, and it makes this season feel different somehow, perhaps worse. And I guess I agreed with that sentiment until I read this point from Hissir's blog. Even if the adult demographic didn't exist for the show, we might still expect to see this sort of tonal and plot shift, because the target demographic is aging as well. It's easy to just say target demographic and envision a monolithic and unchanging collection of 6 to 11-year-old girls, but this is a mistake. Remember, it's been over 3 years since this show was first released, and 3 years is a much longer time for a kid than an adult, both in terms of perception and in terms of cognitive development. These 6 to 11-year-old kids who started watching the show when it was new are now between the ages of 9 and 14. Roughly half the original target demographic is no longer the target demographic, and many of them are likely starting to develop a taste for more complex, long-term and high-stakes storylines. This makes sense of a lot of things for me. If the writers are truly taking into account the changing age of the original target demographic and tweaking the style to accommodate them and the adult demographic, I can see why Season 4 seems a little different. Does this mean that they're doing a very good job? Not necessarily. Most of the episodes so far could have been handled much better. But really, having the show change isn't inherently bad. Even if you think it's changing for the worse, we still have all those good episodes. They're not going anywhere. But many do think that, so far, Season 4 is going downhill for one reason or another. Some don't like the excessive fan pandering we've been getting. Others are annoyed that Alicorn Twilight may as well still be a unicorn from what we've seen. And I agree with those guys. Come on, Twilight. Make a royal decree. Be tied up in Canterlot with royal business as an excuse for you not to appear in an episode that doesn't concern you. Like Daring Don't. You didn't need to be there. Have somebody executed for not bowing before you. Come on, anything. Joking aside, actually I'm not joking. I'd love to see an episode where Twilight gets drunk with royal power. Seriousness aside, Season 4 seems different. Is it better or worse? Well, it's different. I keep rewriting this next paragraph trying to make a neat little summation of this point, but I don't think I can. In fact, I think I'm actually a stupid idiot. So let's back up and actually talk about the episode for once. Apples, bats, song. I can see what's going to happen here. Rarity is siding with AJ because the bats are icky, and Rainbow Dash is siding with AJ because she likes cider, so that leaves Twilight and Pinkie Pie to side with Fluttershy. Twilight sides with Fluttershy because Fluttershy is actually making an argument for why the bats are beneficial, and Twilight would want to research the bats before making any rash decisions, and then Pinkie, actually I guess it doesn't matter where Pinkie stands since she doesn't seem to have many opinions on things besides friendship and babysitting. And then it'll be the two groups arguing over how to properly deal with the bat situation and... No? Okay. Twilight's a stupid idiot, my mistake. This is one of the times it would be good to have her not be around for an episode. I know that Twilight's magic is what created Flutterbat, but you could have made some other reason as to why she transformed. Maybe when Fluttershy tries to go reason with the bats, they swarmed her, and she got bitten. And then AJ says, "Okay, that's it. They've got to go. There's no reasoning with them. Eating my apples is one thing, but now they've hurt my friend." And then AJ and the others round them up, and Rainbow Dash captures all the bats in a big net. Much to Fluttershy's dismay, she'd say, "They didn't mean it. They're just protecting themselves. Let them go." But AJ is having none of it. And then later, the bite actually turns Fluttershy into Flutterbat, and then Flutterbat is the one causing the trouble, and AJ has to try and stop her and turn her back. But first they have to catch her.
How are we gonna get her to stay still long enough for you to do your reverse spell?
That's it!
Of course, Twilight. The stasis spell. Use that on her. Can you not? Will you not? Well, the bottom line is, yes, she could have done that, therefore making the gigantic apple plot device completely pointless. But in my version, Twilight is away on royal business, so sacrificing the apple makes perfect sense. The mirrors don't though. Even if they would work, how would any of them know to do that? Get rid of the mirrors. Instead, they let Fluttershy eat away at the apple, and it's so big and juicy, she doesn't notice them throw a net over her. They catch Flutterbat, and then take her to Sakura to be cured, or Twilight returns, and they explain to her the circumstances, and Twilight uses her extreme powers to revert Fluttershy to normal. Then AG learns that vampire fruit bats always follow the rules laid down by vague signposts, and everyone lives happily ever after. So yeah, Twilight being here wasn't needed whatsoever. It would have been better if she wasn't there, and to be perfectly honest, I want to see less of her. I don't hate her, of course I don't, but I feel that every time she shows up in a situation where her Alicorn status should count for something, and it doesn't, no one mentions it, no one's surprised, it just doesn't feel right. I mean, I guess you could argue that since she's new, people just don't know about her yet. The people in Canterlot certainly know. If she goes to Canterlot and people don't know who she is, then you can get angry, but she doesn't act like a royal, she doesn't dress like one. Maybe alicorns aren't all princesses. Maybe there exist spells that allow unicorns to give themselves temporary wings, and that's what they assume she's doing. If she doesn't act like a royal, or dress like a royal, and there's a possibility that people could mistake her for a unicorn using a wing spell, then I guess it's fair enough that nobody knows who she is. Maybe only Canterlot knows. Twilight being an alicorn and not getting noticed as a princess can be hypothesized away. Her magic, however, cannot. A lot of the problems could be very easily solved by her abilities, but they aren't because Twilight is a stupid idiot who can't remember anything. This has happened before season 4, and no doubt will continue to be a thing that annoys me. And it makes me mad when I see her in an episode that isn't about her at all. She could be absent and the plot would be fine, and the fact that she is there means that the plot is suddenly full of holes. Unless careful consideration is made on the part of the writers to explain why Twilight's magic will not suffice to solve the problem at hand. It's a shame too, because Twilight can be really quite entertaining, but I do think we need to see less of her. Some were fearing when Twilight was announced to be an alicorn that she would have to spend less time with her friends, but the show staff reassured them that she won't. Well, maybe she should. If her situation doesn't change and her magical abilities don't come into play more, then her title as Alicorn Princess means nothing. She hasn't even flown much. I could be wrong, but I don't think she's flown at all outside of the premiere. You know, I could see an awesome episode involving Celestia and Twilight as they go around Equestria doing royal things. Kinda like the Luna comic where Luna takes over from Celestia for a day. Imagine that. An episode with just Celestia and Twilight. No Spike, no main 5, just the two of them, with Celestia trying to teach Twilight how to be a princess. Showing her the ropes, if you will. Goodness knows they need some character interaction. I mean, Celestia feels more like a mother to Twilight than Twilight's mother does. And Celestia herself barely has any character of her own in the show. Most of what she says is exposition. Overall, Bats is an episode about apples. It's a decent episode. Flutterbat made up for a lot of the bad things in the episode, but it could have been so much better if Twilight had just fucked off.